What is the open source? Then we need to go a little bit back in history. The open source, it's actually a very old concept. We probably in the beginning of humanity, every time we started to develop something, we collaborate among us. So the first humans who discover the fire or discover how to use the wheel, they were not thinking about the royalties they were going to charge on everybody who used a wheel after them. On the contrary, they come up with an idea which was improved by the next person who used it, and over centuries and millennia, we keep accumulating this knowledge and these technologies that we use today. So, jumping a few millennia from the wheel to our days, the story, it was not very different for computers or software. It was in the 50s and the 60s where the computers started to become more prominent in human society. And at that time, normally the manufacturers of computers, they will create the software to be used with these computers, and they will give you these programs or the instruction about how to use the machines along with the products. So you could use this basic program language or these basic programs, and you could modify them in any way you wanted. So the fundamental product was the computer, the physical item, and you could program whatever sets of instructions you wanted. So that was the beginning of computing. But then among the community of computer scientists, they started to notice that there was going to be some space for pure software, and they started to become a little bit concerned that the potential actors in the space of software could use this new concept in a very powerful way to strip out freedom from people. So there was the whole concept of the whole open source movement actually started out of this trust from the technology and the computer scientists, from what the big corporations or governments could do with the power to read our data, to store our data, or to give us pieces of software that we would use without knowing what they were doing. That was because in the 70s, the initial idea of providing machines and the ability to program them started to shift to some people giving you programs that were already compiled, let's say they were closed, and we couldn't know what these programs were actually doing. So what we could see on the surface, what these programs delivered to us, we couldn't see what they were actually doing in the background. And we're talking about the 70s. Many years later, we've seen that they were not so wrong actually, and then we saw some of these corporations, government, and people and hackers who have abused software that they give to users, and these users have been stripped of their private information, or they have been, some secrets have been stolen, or they keep scanning your computer and taking your data, send it to somewhere else. So they were not absolutely wrong. So what is all this freedom in the open source? So the concept is that we collaborate and we provide software, or we provide a computer program, but I provide you every single instruction, every single line of code, so you could use it, read it yourself, and see what it actually does. And you can also copy it, you can also redistribute it, so you can have many copies of this. You can also send it to somebody else, you can send it to someone, you can freely modify it, You can use it in one computer, in another computer, in one operating system, in a different operating system. We cannot be locked into something that you cannot see, or you cannot be locked into a specific platform. That was the inspiration that these people have in the 70s around this freedom. Then the concept evolved a lot, because then the concept was not only applied to computers and software, but it was also applied to all kinds of technologies and collaboration. And today we use the open source, which means openly sharing everything we're doing in biotechnology, in environmental, if we want to, in engineering, in medical science, in absolutely almost every field of development where people want to collaborate. There is a lot of scientists or people interested in that prefer to do the research, prefer to do the collaboration in a way that is transparent, that is not overly influenced by any body, right? And that can later can be used not only by them, but by absolutely everyone in the world. Yeah? So that was the story behind how we got to open source. Okay, so with regard to the software in itself, they started to develop many different types of applications using these concepts for almost every single use we could think of. Of course, one of the main initial pieces of software that came under this concept of open source was the Linux kernel. It's not the first, it's not the only one. There are many others, but that was one of the critical pieces, which enable to have an operating system that we can run on almost any hardware, and it's a standard, it's free, it's open, we all know what it does. So we can install it on PCs, we can install it on servers, we can install it on mobile phones, we can install it on printers, we can install it on almost everything. And it's a fundamental building block so that everything else can work. There are databases, very powerful databases, which are engines that help us manipulate tons of data in an organized way. There is tools for managing your productivity needs, like spreadsheets or word processing. So there is some tools that they are compatible across different platforms. You can use pieces of word processing that have been created on another software, and you can use them freely. You can freely copy, you can freely see what the software does, and you can freely modify it to make it better, and then you can put it back, those improvements, into the community, so everybody gets the benefit. There are tools for managing projects, there are tools for processing video, processing audio, handling your email, storing data. Even all this webcast you're seeing is being done through a series of pieces of open source software. So everything from the video, the manipulation of the images, the audio, everything is done within free pieces of software.